This is quite unprecedented. Usually when the EU negotiates with another country, it's about convergence. So when the EU negotiated with Canada to do a trade deal, it was about where they could find places where they could converge. This is unprecedented because Britain, as a full member of the EU, is fully converged. This will be about where we want to diverge. So that brings a dynamic into this trade negotiation that's absolutely unique, and that's difficult to predict. I worked for the European Commission once and was involved in a trade negotiation, and it is a hugely complex thing. There are hundreds of files on every single product. All of the different member states have interests in different files. The EU negotiator is both negotiating with the country it's dealing with in front of them, the UK in this case, and all of the member states behind them who have an interest in all of those files. So this will be a very complex and difficult negotiation.
I think the negotiations will be difficult. Obviously, I suppose it's a bit of a cliche at this stage, but the UK wants to leave the European Union but still wants to retain all the benefits of EU membership. That would not be in our interest, frankly. I mean, it's in Ireland's strategic interest to have a close relationship with the UK to ensure that Irish business can continue to trade with the UK and vice versa. I think an outcome whereby the UK could leave all of the institutions, effectively revoke all its obligations as an EU member, but benefit from all of the optimal membership benefits from the European Union single market, that's not an outcome that anybody can countenance. So while I think it's important that there is a close trading relationship post-Brexit, the idea that the UK could, for example, start to flout EU competition rules and start to offer state aid supports to industry in the UK, which would disadvantage Irish industry, that's not something that can be facilitated. So I think we'll have to take a tough line on that. And I think that's something that will actually be a common position across the EU member states. There will be different competing interests, obviously, during the trade negotiations from an EU point of view. But I think on certain issues, like the integrity of the single market, I think there will be a lot of cohesion again, which possibly will come as a surprise to the United Kingdom.
My view is that Ireland should certainly give Britain as much as is feasible and be very much on the end of the spectrum among the 27 to give Britain as much as is feasible, with one possible exception, and that's the area around state aids. We need to be very careful that Britain, outside the EU, is not in a position to effectively bribe companies to locate in the UK, possibly to leave Ireland and locate in the UK. So controls around how much the British government can give taxpayers' money to private companies, i.e. state aid rules, is something that we would have an interest in being quite strong on the British.
It's going to be a huge challenge for sure. If you look at issues like tax, competition, antitrust law, financial services regulation, data, we have traditionally had a huge amount in common with the UK, and they being one of the three biggest member states have had enormous influence, notwithstanding the fact they've been kind of withdrawing a little bit over the last 10 or 15 years. So it's going to be a big challenge for Ireland. We've relied on the UK, both the government and industry bodies, to provide, I suppose, the intelligence, the research, the background briefings, to draft the amendments, to participate in the expert groups in Brussels and at EU level, and they've been hugely impactful doing that. So Ireland has to, I think, really step back and assess its strategic relationship with the European Union. What are the priorities for Ireland in this entirely changed European Union? Where do we foster better relations, stronger, deeper relations with other member states? What are the issues that we prioritise through those bilateral relationships? And then how do we really start making an impact at EU level in Brussels, infiltrating the European institutions, ensuring that our people are in there, working at a senior level. And I think also the Irish government needs to really cooperate with industry in Ireland, with foreign direct investment companies in Ireland, as well as indigenous companies, to identify areas that they can cooperate, whether it's pooling resources, whatever, because as a very small country, relatively speaking, we can't match the resources of the UK, but what we can do is use them smartly and cleverly and punch above our weight, as we tend to do on the world stage, but we really need to do now at EU level. We have already joined one formal grouping of EU member states called the Hansa Group, which is basically Nordic, Baltic countries along with the Netherlands. And that's very much an alliance driven by the finance ministries focusing on tax. That group managed to, we'll say, disrupt plans for a digital tax recently, for example. And that's worthwhile, but we can't afford to be a country that's just there to say no. And I think we have to be very careful about not just aligning ourselves with the more Eurosceptic countries, because actually Ireland is, relatively speaking, we are a pro-integration country. We have different priorities to a lot of those countries, for example, in the Common Agricultural Policy. So we have different strategic interests. So we need to pick the countries where we have common interests.
I think that while there's probably been a ramping up of preparedness in the last couple of weeks, the thing about the financial services industry is that it's been getting prepared since June 2016, possibly even before that in terms of preparation for what might happen if the referendum resulted in a leave vote. So the industry came together very quickly post-referendum to create task forces because we recognised that there was potentially an existential issue here in terms of Ireland no longer having access to the UK market in terms of financial products sold in there, but also UK asset managers, UK insurance companies not being able to access Ireland or being able to access Europe. So that was the existential crisis, but then there was also an opportunity because if UK companies didn't have passports, Irish companies do have passports, so was there an opportunity to relocate some activity from the UK to Ireland? So I think recognising both the crisis and the opportunity, the Irish financial services industry really has done a lot of work in the last 2.5 years to make sure that whatever happens on the 29th of March, we're ready for the 1st of April. Ireland has actually done remarkably well in terms of relocation of financial services activity. I think the latest results show us as having over 100 new licences granted as a direct result of Brexit, and that compares with I think 60 or so in our nearest rival. That is largely down to the activity of the central bank and the response of the central bank to Brexit and the preparedness of the central bank to authorise entities. The central bank significantly changed the way that they approach this, introducing a fast track for well-prepared entities that required extraordinary responsiveness on the central bank's part really to reviewing applications, to providing comments on applications. It did involve some shifting of the sands in terms of the substance requirements for these entities, but the quid pro quo was a remarkable turnaround from the central bank, resulting in, as I say, over 100 authorisations. So really a phenomenal effort on the central bank's part.
The foreign direct investment aspect of all of this is the only clear upside for Ireland. Britain has the largest stock of foreign direct investment of any EU country by a considerable distance. And a lot of that is because it's an attractive place to do business and it had full access to the European market for decades. There is no doubt that companies, and it's already happened, that companies that are servicing the EU market from the UK will exit or will partially exit to maintain full access to the European market. That is a very big opportunity for Ireland. Ireland is a very attractive place to do business. We know that for many decades. It's been the economic policy success story of this state over the past 100 years, attracting foreign investment. Britain doing this to itself, excluding itself from the European market, makes Ireland relatively more attractive. So from the FDI perspective, there are opportunities, big opportunities.